You are expected to lead with strength, but at the same time, not be perceived as too assertive. Many would probably say women can be too emotional, but that is exactly the generalization that should be addressed. As a rookie, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. No day is the same in this industry.
I'm sure that you have plan B, plan C, plan D, just in case you have them.
As the saying goes, there's no I in team. And I believe pressure can also bring clarity to an extent, but speed without clarity can create bigger issues. To add to our height, because I'm a shorty myself.
They say women cannot function under pressure. That's total opposite. We build under pressure.
I realized that framing it as men versus women is actually, it misses the point. If we can just lead for the sake of leading as human beings.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another season of Peach Marathon Podcast, the show where we meet innovators from iGaming world and hear their stories straight from the source. This season, titled Pretty Serious, is dedicated to Women's Month and to the brilliant women moving the industry forward. Today, I'm joined by Lou Mary, CEO of Eventus International, who is here to share her perspective and insights. Lou Mary, let's start from the beginning. How did you first get into iGaming, and what did you understand very early that people outside the industry misunderstand?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. So taking it back 11 years ago, I actually started as a graphic designer within the industry, focusing more on the marketing side of things. And early on, I did notice something that genuinely surprised me. It was that marketing was very one-sided in this male-dominated industry. Much of the creative direction relied heavily on provocative imagery. So women were very much objectified in the marketing materials, also on certain event floors. And as a woman in the industry, that narrative felt very narrow, outdated, one-sided. And the more I learned what converted, the more I questioned whether that approach truly reflected long-term brand value, and if we should change that narrative moving forward. I also remember a significant shift about 7-8 years ago when individuals first spoke up about it, about ladies on event floors and how they were perceived and objectified wearing certain clothing. So instead of following that, what already was done in a promotional sense, I also started focusing on shifting that narrative for our events. So towards what I felt more is sustainable, strong values, rather focus on strong values, long-term vision, and meaningful brand positioning. And so that mindset shaped how I lead as a COO today. And I believe growth comes from authenticity and substance, not shortcuts. That's the philosophy that has also become one of our core strengths at Eventus International.
It's always fascinating hearing how people find their way into this industry. And to be honest, everyone seems to have such a different entry point. When you enter this industry, once you're in, it tends to pull you deeper and deeper, and which actually brings me to my next question. You've been building Eventus International for years now. What keeps you motivated to stay in it for longer period?
Well, it was definitely not all me. It's a team effort building Eventus all these years. However, from the beginning, I would say I never liked to follow the norm. I always were drawn to thinking differently, whether it was gaming events, how it was promoted, or how brands positioned themselves. I think what keeps me motivated is the ability to really stay true to myself in what we do. No day is the same in this industry. And at our company, we also offer the freedom to think outside the box and pitch new ideas and be creative, and also to speak openly about the challenges you face at events. So with that being said, I'm proud to say that we transformed this company, which is now consisting of 80% female team members. Wow. And with that being said, it became such a safe space for all of us to work together. So nothing is more motivating than actually being truly happy and to feel empowered and appreciated and seen. And of course, it didn't happen overnight. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it in the last 10 years. But every year we build on an even stronger team. We try to stay inspired. And as the saying goes, there's no I in team. And our strength comes from standing behind one another at each event. And that brings me also, I have to say, send a shout out to our CEO, Mr. Yuri Sujiptari, because he truly backs us ladies daily and support our initiatives within the company. You can only get so far on your own, but you can support one another, and that as a team, you can get much further.
I know what exactly you're talking about, having upper management that set the bar so high and giving you the freedom. That's truly amazing. And kudos to Eventus and staying committed to building something long term. It takes real passion. Through your work, you've organized countless events and met thousands of people along the way. Was there a particular event, experience, or person that changed the way you see this business?
I won't say a particular person or a particular event, but rather an event series where I really saw attendees and participants coming together and unite as one. If I take it back again 8 years ago, we explored the idea of creating a true C-level event platform for Asia. Now, those that are familiar with Eventus International know that we are among the first to pioneer large-scale gaming events in Africa. And from there, we expanded into various emerging markets globally. In 2018, we launched this new movement internally. We created the brand Spice. Now, what I enjoyed most and what also surprised me, the event grew tremendously over 3 years while it took place there, and it became a meeting platform for professionals across Asia and was seen not only as an event, but a celebration of culture and togetherness. Naturally, the event expanded across Asia, moving to Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Thailand, with more locations on the horizon. Last year, we initiated the expansion to the Middle East as well. So very exciting movement there. But what people don't always see from the outside is the strategic patience behind expansion such as this. Growth isn't about launching everywhere at once. It's about building those strong foundations in each market, working on relationships with key stakeholders and local partners. And I realized that is what makes this business so special. It is forever changing, like you said. It's evolving and the opportunity is endless, but exploring new markets and taking the risk to host and produce these events in new regions is what keeps things exciting.
I agree, because events really are where industry comes alive. No matter how much, I don't know, how much big of a network you have, it's where ideas, partnership, and sometimes entire strategies are born. So I would say events holds a very special and important role. But from the outside, the events can look very glamorous. What's the part of this world people they never see, but you deal with it all the time?
Well, the real truth about events is, especially in the iGaming industry, is that it's never smooth sailing. We spoke about this before we started, technical issues, right? That's on a daily. A lot of work goes into the organization, the planning of events. It's long hours and you always have to put the client first. Doesn't matter how tired you are. And take note that we host and produce these events around the world. So we deal with various time zones, but being available 24/7, I would say, becomes a challenge at times, but not even that bothers me too much. I'm actually honestly a people pleaser at heart, which is probably a good thing and a bad thing. So I love replying to clients. Actually, I look forward to attending to their needs, to hearing positive feedback after an event concluded. When an event is finally over, nothing brings me more joy than to hear a sponsor or a speaker, exhibitor, or a delegate that were pleased with the event that they just attended. And of course, feedback is not always only positive, but we always welcome feedback so that we can improve on the next edition. But I would say not even bad feedback in that sense is what's offering the most struggle in the event. I would say it comes down to, and this is probably what most ladies will understand, is your poor swollen feet after a week of hosting an event, because you are up from 4 a.m. in the morning, and when you finally get to bed, if you're lucky, it's 2 a.m. And don't get me wrong, we will never complain on the floor we will stay positive, but but goodness me, your feet takes a beating. And as a woman, we sometimes just want to wear, a tiny bit of heel to like add to our height, because I'm a shorty myself. You end up having like 10 plasters per foot at the end of the week. But it all honestly remains worth it. And you'll probably see me doing the exact same thing at our next event.
That's all of us. You said you like being people pleaser. I would call it like, to be in the events, you should be brilliant, strategic minded, because I'm sure that you have plan B, plan C, plan D, just in case you have them. It really shows how much work happens behind the scene that people rarely think about. You've also had the chance to see the industry evolve from so many angles over the years. Taking that into account, I'm really curious, if you were starting from zero, which niche in iGaming would you choose to enter? And would you do anything differently this time around?
If I knew AI was going to be such a big hit, I would have started with that more earlier on, because the influence of AI is, of course, changing everything as we know it. And if it is so rapidly evolving and becoming part of our entire gaming ecosystem. And we have even witnessed now brands, changing their logos, adding the letters AI to it as well. We can't deny that it is now part of our everyday, and surely will be for the foreseeable future. I believe the key here is the way in which it's being incorporated. So if I can turn back some time and start earlier event, I would focus on how the key is to incorporate into products and services, and how it should remain user friendly, because AI, of course, makes it much more advanced, and we should move along with the world and the technology. But it's important to know that everywhere in the world, they have different technology to their disposal, to their access. So therefore, I believe you have to move forward in a sensible way, catering for the whole world and not just a selected few, because you're going to end up losing customer base in the process, and no one wants that. So a niche approach would have been to host a platform focusing on AI in the gaming industry and how best to incorporate it in the gaming ecosystem. But this is also something that we can still host, so it's never too late.
Agree, and I share your idea. Nowadays, like, I know usually people are like divided into two groups. Some value and cherish AI, the other thinks that AI made people lazy. Yes to both and no to both. People nowadays entering this industry, it is especially important for them to keep in mind. Exactly. And since this season is dedicated to Women's Month, I would like to talk a bit more about your experience as a woman in this space. What is something about being leading woman in this industry that people still don't fully understand?
Well, one thing people still don't really understand is that being a woman, especially in a leadership role, often means that you're navigating expectations that goes far beyond your actual job. So you are expected to lead with strength, but at the same time, not be perceived as too assertive. And you are expected to be approachable, but still command authority. So what many people don't see is that constant balancing act that comes with those expectations. Despite that, women continue to bring immense value to leadership throughout resilience, empathy, collaboration, and strategic thinking. But the real progress will come when women in leadership are simply seen as leaders without that extra scrutiny of labels and attached to their gender. If we can just lead for the sake of leading as human beings.
I agree. Like, this is really important point, because to be honest, usually we've been judged differently. Even the meaning of perfection, success, it's different when you're a man or when you're a woman. That's a really important point. Thanks for sharing. And it naturally leads into a broader question about leadership. In your experience, do women tend to lead differently in this industry, or do you see leadership as something that goes beyond gender?
I think anyone has the potential to lead, to be a leader, if they equip themselves with the correct skills. But it also comes down to if you really want to step into that role or not. I do think women tend to lead a slightly differently, as we naturally have that motherly instinct, but we also have the strong ability to be able to set aside emotions and take on challenges. I guess this is exactly where many would probably say women can be too emotional, but that is exactly the generalization that should be addressed. Because placed under pressure, our instincts activate. And they activate in a very strong way with a heightened sense of protective instincts. So we can clearly identify what is worth fighting for. And I believe pressure for us can also bring clarity to an extent. And this is what I have experienced as a woman. So when stakes are quite high on the event floor or generally in the work sense, I personally focus on 3 simple principles. I separate my emotion and ego from the issue. I look at the situation in a rational and strategical sense, and I focus on the solution rather than the reactions. The natural instinct is often just to react quickly and eliminate the problem, but speed without clarity can create bigger issues. And I also don't categorize problems big versus small, and I think this is also where the caring aspect of a woman comes in. Every issue deserves our attention, and I attend to every task as I will do with big or small, because the reality is small problems can also be big ones if you're ignoring it.
I totally agree. Yet sometimes people they say women cannot function under pressure. That's total opposite. Like we build under pressure.
We thrive under pressure.
Exactly. Yet leadership is such an interesting topic, especially in this industry that has traditionally been quite male dominated. What's the stereotype about women in leadership that you're genuinely tired of hearing?
I do get this a lot, and I would say there's a tendency to place women in narrow boxes. I, for one, am always perceived younger than I am, and I'm not sure if it's a compliment or not, but usually that follows with that impression that, oh, she's young, she doesn't know much.
I totally agree with you, even though I would say this industry as an iGaming has evolved so much over the years and we have like more of a modern thinkers. But it's still interesting that some of these stereotypes, they still exist. And I totally agree that all of us, we should work from ourselves, starting from ourselves to vanish this for good. So, let me ask you this. Do you think women still have to work harder to be seen as credible in this industry? And if yes, where do you see and feel it most?
Can't speak for everyone, but if I look at what I'm still encountering today, I would say we tend to work a bit harder. And we do try to prove ourselves a bit more within the industry still. Early on, I became very aware that the women in the industry were often under-recognized. It was, and in many ways still is today, a boys' club. And I realized that framing it as men versus women is actually, it misses the point. What truly accelerated my career was education and using my voice. Never be scared to voice your opinion. So you have a voice, use it. And I made it a priority to constantly educate myself and to never be the person in the room without a voice. So in high level conversations, it's of course easy to be overshadowed and overlooked. And when you don't claim the space to be heard, you slowly feel like you're losing that sense of purpose. So yes, as women, we sometimes need to elevate our voices a bit more, but the real lesson is if you have value to add, you must put it on the table. So some of my biggest career leaps came from small ideas that I just simply had the courage to share. And if I was starting again today, I would do exactly the same thing, just faster. I would trust my instincts and I will speak up sooner, because you just never know when a small idea can spark big change for the future.
That's very honest perspective. The same happens with me, especially when I was younger. Like my idea phrased from my male colleague taken more seriously than the one that I addressed. That's what happened before, but I see that it's improving over time. Lumar, if you could say one uncomfortable truth about how this industry treats women in leadership, what would it be?
This takes me back to what I mentioned earlier, that I sometimes have the problem to be taken seriously. It doesn't always come easily for me. Again, it's that perception that I maybe look younger and more inexperienced. And again, I can't speak for all women, but this is what I encountered when it comes down to business, for example. And as a senior representative in the company, you usually have the final say when it comes down to negotiation, but still some will try to bypass you and find the final answer somewhere else. But this is again, when I go back to what I said before as well, remove emotion and ego from the equation. We as ladies, we do this best when it comes to negotiation, which is part of our daily leadership. Listening is the most powerful tool. If you truly listen, you understand the needs and the motivation and the leverage points, which you can actually use to your advantage. So only then you can really craft proposals that will benefit everyone involved. So my go-to philosophy in these kinds of situations, as well as when I'm under pressure, is just to take a breath before I react. And I will think before I speak. But most importantly, I will listen before I lead.
Thank you for being open about that. And to close on forward-looking note, what advice would you give to women who wants to grow in leadership role in industries that are still largely male-dominated?
I have something very simple, but it has really proven to help me since the beginning, because never forget that first impressions last. So I have two simple things that I do. First of all, have courage to believe in yourself. And second of all, go in with a strong handshake when you meet someone new. So I'm taking it back to 2017 at my very first ICE in London. Nobody told me about the comfortable shoe rule because I was the first lady in the company that went to ICE. So I rocked up with boots with 4-inch high heels, and I was trained to meet and approach potential participants for our events. I was thrown straight into the deep end. And as a rookie, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And back then it was extremely male dominated, more so as today. So the very first thing I learned, in addition to always wearing comfortable shoes, is that you must have courage and you have to give a strong, firm handshake with every person that you meet. I remember the first person's hand I shook didn't even bother to look me in the eyes. So with the next person, I made sure this person is aware he's shaking my hands, and that naturally ensured eye contact. So even at the very early stages of your career, you never feel like when you're meeting someone new, especially when you're young and you still have loads to learn in the industry, that you are not worthy of the attention and respect that you deserve.
That's fantastic advice. And I think a lot of people listening will really appreciate hearing that, and especially hearing that from you. Lou Marie, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights and stories from the front lines of iGaming. To everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good industry story or just someone who likes hearing smart people talk. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and of course, keep pitching.